Hello, this is Jim Kenzel from ASA. I just wanted everybody to know who's online that we will be starting the webinar in approximately 1 minute. So stay tuned, everybody. Okay, it is 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's time to start the webinar. We have a lot to cover in the next hour, so I wanted to be sure to start on time. And hello, everybody. As I mentioned earlier, I am Jim Kenzel, the ASA Staff Liaison to the ASA Safety Committee. And welcome to all of you to this ASA Safety Committee webinar on COVID-19 and safety in the workplace. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss guidance and best practices for opening up buildings that were shut down during the pandemic and maybe starting to be reopening up, and also ways to keep the workplace a safe workplace as we move forward related to COVID-19 and other potential environmental quality type contaminants that you'll be hearing us talk about today. I would like to recognize the ASA supplier partners for their contribution to the ASA. You can see their logos here on the screen. The reason I proudly display the supplier partners, it's because of their donations, significant financial donations to ASA, that we are able to provide these type of webinars free. So thanks to all of you for your contributions and support of ASA. It is much appreciated. So many of you provided pre-webinar input on questions you have, and thank you for that. We have tried to incorporate the questions into the panel discussion. During the program, if you have questions, please enter your questions into the comment box. And I will be monitoring the comment box to see if the questions they come in, and I will feed them to the panelists as we progress. You will hear during the discussions on potential health risks outside of the exposure of the coronavirus. This is appropriate because it is becoming clearer every day that our built environments are seeing increased impacts of health risks related to and impacts on the environmental quality that we need to be concerned with. For instance, Legionella and future pandemics. So this goes beyond just COVID-19 today. This is, we hope too, as the panelist discussions, you will hear us talk about other potential contaminants as well as future impacts on our businesses. As a reminder, our panelists are providing their expertise and guidance today, but I caution that the discussions during this webinar should not be considered legal counsel. Policies and practices you develop to reduce the risk of COVID-19 or other contaminants and health risks in your environment should be reviewed by your legal counsel before implementation. Let me introduce our panelists for today's discussion. And to the panelists, I'm going to ask that you raise your hand when I mention your name so people know who you are. To the participants, we apologize, but David Kraus is in a secret witness protection program, and we're having trouble getting his actual face coming through, but that is David Kraus in the shadows there, so you'll see him raise his hand. But let me start off with Tim Keane. Tim Keane is a consulting engineer with Legionella Risk Management is an internationally recognized expert on methods to control the risk of Legionella in building water system design and operation and mitigate issues. He has 40 years of field engineering experience, including new construction project engineering, facility engineering, water treatment consulting, and the last 18 years focused on building water system design, operation, maintenance, and co-development for waterborne pathogen mitigation and control. He was a member of the ASHRAE 188 committee since 2005 through publication of the 2015 and 2018 standards. He has routinely presented at ASHRAE and ASFE conferences, offered training seminars to plumbing designers, infection control, and building maintenance. He has worked with federal, state, and local health departments, as well as building owners, operators across the U.S. in outbreak investigations and resolutions. Dr. David Kraus, who you can almost see, David, raise your hand, just there you go, is the founder and principal toxicologist for healthcare consulting and contracting in Tallahassee, Florida. He is also a certified industrial hygienist and licensed mold assessor. Dr. Kraus received his doctorate in environmental occupational health and Master's of Science in Public Health from the University of South Florida. Over the past 25 years, he has practiced environmental science and public health, focused in the areas of toxicology, occupational health, industrial hygiene, indoor air quality, and exposure to microbes and chemicals in homes, schools, office buildings, and healthcare facilities. From 2008 to 2011, Dr. Kraus was state toxicologist for the Florida Department of Health and led the state's efforts to investigate public health risks associated with corrosive Chinese drywall and the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. David is a recognized expert in risk assessment, workplace exposures, healthcare facilities, Legionnaire's disease, combustion products, flame retardants, internal chemical exposures, and mold. He co-authored the 2009 Guidelines for the Surveillance, Investigation, and Control of Legionella Disease in Florida, and a 2015 AIHA Guideline for the Recognition, Evaluation, and Control of Legionella in Building Water Systems. David Bush.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
You're welcome, David. David Bush, an associate of the firm, and David, your firm is, I forgot to write it down.
Corey Ullman.
Thank you.
We're in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Concentrates his practice on insurance defense and civil litigation. His experience includes trying numerous jury trial cases to verdict in premises, liability, and automotive matters. He also practices in the area of nursing home and medical malpractice, commercial and construction litigation. He formerly practiced with the United States Department of Labor, specializing in occupational and mine safety and health, together with representation of management in labor and employment matters. Wow,
Thank you.
We've got ourselves some experts on this panel. I am humbled to be with the three of you and to be involved with this, and I thank you all for taking the time and spending this time with us. So I will be asking the panelists questions, and I will typically direct those to an individual on the panel. The other panel people will come in. So as a reminder to the audience, please enter anything, questions as they arise as we go forward into the chat box of your GoToMeeting control box. So let's start off our discussions. Oh, by the way, one more thing. At the end of the, we will be probably bringing up different documents as the panelists speak. At the end of the presentation, I will be bringing up a slide that will show you where to get those documents, the links to get to them, and all of that. So that'll be showing up at the end of the webinar. So let's get going on the questions and the discussion. So David Kraus, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll open up to everybody else. But let's start off right at the beginning of the first question is, what are the considerations a company should even take in deciding whether to reopen if they were closed down? What should they think about? What should cause them thinking along those lines and actually make that step to go forward?
Certainly, certainly. Hopefully I'm off of mute. That's my favorite trick. One of the first things people need to consider as a owner, operator, or manager is what are the public health and regulatory guidelines for your specific area. While one state may have a release, the neighboring state may not. Cities that are on a border may have employees that are in another state and may have different rules that they need to be addressing. So look at the current public health guidance and regulatory requirements for your operations where you're at. Is it worth it? If you're going to open up a store and you see that your neighboring, maybe your competitors are having 3 people a day coming into the office or into the retail establishment, maybe it's just not worth it because you may open, but nobody may show up. Beyond that, you really need to look at your staff and your customers and perform a risk assessment. That can be a back of the envelope thing, or it can be a more formalized event. But look at what you can do to minimize and manage the risk of exposure and to minimize and manage the risk of infection in your staff. That needs to be looking at several layers, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But beyond the infection related to COVID-19 is your facility, the building or campus that you operate on. We've been closed down for a while, and Tim's going to talk a little bit more about this later, but we recognize water systems may have sat stagnant for a while, and that could pose a hazard for lead, waterborne pathogens, sediment, debris. A lot of issues can come from that. Look at your fire suppression systems. Look at your electrical systems. Look at your any life safety issues that were supposed to have been inspected, repaired, addressed during the shutdown. We want to make sure we don't do we don't mess up in the easy stuff, and then because we're so hyper-focused on the pathogens.
Yeah, it's it's the old adage, everybody's wearing a face mask and we're taking their temperature, but the water system's contaminated and they're all getting sick from that. So it's and we're going to get to that. So thank you, David. Just want to give the other panelists an opportunity if you want to respond on that general question about how do I decide to even open up my facilities if they've been shut down, or how do I decide to bring my people back from working remotely back into the facility? I mean, what is that high level thought process, Dave or Tim, if you want to add to the conversation?
Well, Jim, from my standpoint, the threshold consideration would be, am I ready to reopen? Should I reopen now? Once you get the legally approved to do so by the governor or whomever, whatever your state is, whatever your shutdown requirement is, are you prepared to open immediately? Obviously it makes perfect sense. Yeah, as long as these businesses have been shut down, obviously from a commercial standpoint, you want to get right to it. But bear in mind that in the event, and unfortunately in my job, I have to look at all the potential issues down the line. We look at problems and we invent problems in our minds, thinking to advise our clients. So that's one of the questions we're going to be asked. Well, if I open today, even though it's legally permissible, am I exposing myself to potential liability if one of my employees, or if you're in a type of business where you have a commercial customers that come in, if they become exposed, am I then subject to liability for that? And as we were discussing off the record, you're always going to run into somebody. The argument you're going to be facing is, oh, well, you put profits ahead of safety. So once you do have obviously you do have a threshold argument to say, well, if the government approves the opening, then I have at least a legal basis to do that. And there's somewhat of a presumption that it's safe to do so.
Yep.
I would suggest that you plan from this point, if you make your plans in advance as to what your policies are going to be, what can you do, secure as much information from these gentlemen and whatever sources are available, CDC, OSHA, whatever, as to recommended policies and practices.
Yep.
And have something in mind. Don't just open your doors and then play it by ear. Be prepared so that you can address a lot of the initial questions right off the bat, and then you can deal and tailor your situation to the circumstances as they develop.
Yeah, I think the good news is based on some of the questions we got from the registrants prior to the webinar. I think a lot of people are doing that based on the questions we have. So they're asking the questions before they reopen.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, it is.
Tim, let's move to the concept that David brought up, and one of in fact, it's the concept that you and I first connected. And for everybody else, I've known Tim for a long time. Due to our ASA's involvement in the Legionella standards and the ASHRAE standards that we mentioned in Tim's background. So I've known Tim for a long time, and Tim came out with a publication around reopening during COVID-19 and the potential impacts and health risks related to the water systems, which got me to reach out to Tim, which started this whole concept of this webinar. So Tim, can you talk to us about that additional risk beyond being exposed to COVID-19 or the coronavirus? Can you talk about that additional risk that David alluded to in opening up and restarting up our building systems?
Absolutely, and kind of follow up with what David said. All three of us have a lot of legal experience. Dave Bush is an actual lawyer, and David Kraus and I are involved in litigations and have been involved as expert witness. One case came to mind from what Dave Bush was saying as far as you got to have plans and you got to be prepared. In one case, a document that was uncovered was a memo of a meeting after a Legionnaire's disease outbreak at a hospital, and the hospital was required by code to have a risk management plan. And the meeting notes said, went to Google to find out what we should do. That's not a good position to be in when you not only not have a plan, but you have notes that document you had zero preparation. So there is going to be a risk, and a lot of us are concerned of the risk for serious outbreaks when these buildings that have been stagnant are opened, and that water that's been sitting there with potential of corroding the lead and causing higher lead levels and potential for bacteria growth. So I did write 2 documents that are on my website. I know IAPMO's posted them on their website. I'm not sure who else has posted them as well. The first one is titled COVID-19 and Legionella Preparations to Consider for Municipal and Building Potable Water Systems Now. And so those are things that can be done now, touching base with your municipality. If you are in a commercial district with a lot of other buildings that are shut down, because your municipal supply might be impacted, it might be stagnant, and the municipality might need to do some flushing. And what you can do to a building water system immediately prior to opening to reduce the risk for bacteria growth. And the other document is titled Developing a Building Potable Water System Flushing Program. And it's in depth on what you need to do to be compliant with ASHRAE 188, what buildings have to comply with ASHRAE 188, what buildings don't, what you should do to flush the building out. For instance, if it mentions if it's a small building with a home hot water heating system and no circulation, all you need to do is turn up the temperature and flush with high temperature, and you have minimal risk. If it's a large building with a large complex plumbing system, it goes through step by step on how to flush the remains coming in and flush your equipment and any type of potable or non-potable equipment. So those 2 documents are pretty much at a ground zero level for a maintenance person to understand. And then there's other documents on the website as well that go into a higher level for public health and for associations that are preparing their own documents.
Thank you, Tim.
And I'll throw this in there as well, Tim.
Good.
I mean, Tim's been doing this a long time, and this comes by as second nature to him. This will not be second nature to most facilities operators, building owners. So seek help, seek guidance, hire folks like Tim to reach out and help you guide you through this. This is not a good start for a DIY program.
Yeah, well, and that is in my document. If you're going to do water treatment or get in chemicals, you definitely have to get a consultant. But one of the misnomers that's out there that I tried to address in my document is people say for anything you need to get a consultant or an expert, and you don't. If you've got a small restaurant or a small office with a 60-gallon home hot water heater, you can do that yourself, and that's included in my document. And basically turn the temperature up to max and have 130 degrees coming out of the faucet and flush it, and it's a pretty simple thing to do. So those options are listed there. If you have a complex system, you might need a consultant, and if you definitely have a big system, you probably do need a consultant. Good point, David.
And if I may, let me just add, this having been advised of this, and it's great to go out and get the information, but you can't just sit on it. Once you got the information, you've got to do something. Ignorance of the law is no defense, but neither is knowledge and inaction. And in fact, very often that's even more problematic, as Tim and I know from a case we worked on where you do have information and you say to yourself, it doesn't apply to me for X, Y, or Z reason. And you may even be right, but that isn't necessarily going to defend you, immunize you from liability. And it certainly isn't going to immunize you from somebody making an accusation. Again, the more you do, at least you're showing reasonable efforts, and then you have the that is the first step. But you don't want to be sitting on a body of information. Well, yeah, I got all this stuff. Well, what did you do with it? Well, we didn't do anything too much, whatever reason. That could even be more problematic.
And there's a lot of good information and not good information as well coming out every day on this. So, David, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to talk or ask you a question about in the OSHA and CDC guidelines that have come out. They talk about risk levels, and they talk about the type of steps you should be taking dependent on the risk level that an employee is involved with. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of give everybody that understanding of the different risk levels?
Well, as far as an employee and what their exposure is or what their job titles are, again, this is very qualitative, and I think you need to understand the context of this as it's being put out there. One, they're trying to give a framework, some rudimentary guidance to employers. Two, this is like guidance from my mother-in-law. She hasn't been there. She doesn't know what I do. This is from, frankly, from well-intended academics, regulators who have never done what you do. So, it's a floor, it's not the ceiling. And, beyond that, the risk levels are very qualitative. And I think, trying to establish which people in your organization fall into those risk levels. So if that helps put it out there as it's well intended, it is very likely to change. And that's one thing that when we get into these legal cases, what was the standard of care? Well, what day was it? And things are moving so fast in this situation, it's a day-to-day kind of thing. In Legionnaires, it's what year was it? And the standards have been changing rapidly from year to year or every 3 to 4 years. But this is happening so fast that I don't think you could look at anything and say that was the definitive standard of care, because we don't even know that any of this standard of care that is being put out there is going to work. 6 feet? Well, I saw something the other night. It's 12 feet. Okay, well, 12 feet. What does that mean? You really couldn't even be in most buildings then. So, the risk levels I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight on.
Yeah, I think the point and the reason I asked the question was that I guess I wanted to make sure that our participants were even aware they exist. I think going back to all of you said it, the information out there, it's out there. You've got OSHA and CDC guidelines. They are pretty high level and all of that. But I think the risk levels is one way people can look to say and evaluate and go through that questioning process that Dave Bush brought up earlier about, okay, where are my employees positioned? Where do they fall in this risk level? And here's what we, at least today, this is probably the type of things we should do, and we need to be monitoring to see how it changes tomorrow. Any other
Jim,
thoughts?
I would like to make people aware of something that's just recently come out from the American Industrial Hygiene Association. It's called, it's a website called backtoworksafely.org. Again, backtoworksafely.org. Sponsored by the American Industrial Hygiene Association, and free online downloadable resources for that are been developed for specific areas such as retail, hair and nail salons, gyms, construction, home service providers, and others will be coming out as well. So this is a place to keep an eye on and to get some more, I'll say, where the rubber meets the road on how do you address this once you're given the okay to open. What things can you what steps can you take to reduce the risk across the board for your employees and your customers?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, David. In fact, that'll be part of that last slide I showed today. We'll have that link to that website. And I don't know if you mentioned, but I think they even have one for general office.
They do.
Yeah, I saw it. And I read that one, and it really, it looks like it takes it to the next level from the CDC and the OSHA guidelines to really start giving you more specifics. So thank you for bringing that up. I think it's
it's not into the weeds, but it's at least into the forest.
That's again, and we'll bring it up again later, but that's I always want to say the AHIA, I don't know why, it's the AIHA, Industrial Hygiene Association. So thank you for that. Hey, Dave Bush, I wanted to come back to you because we did get a question, and you brought up the concept of documenting earlier. And one of the questions we got in the survey, which was, do you recommend to document the actions along the way? And can you you sort of touched on it, so you can, since that was a question we got, can you jump on that and give us your thoughts?
To me, that is a classic conundrum that we deal with in the law. Do I do it? Don't I do it? If you do it, in many instances, it is the best approach. For instance, I used to, when I worked for the United States Department of Labor, the best thing you could have, particularly in labor relations, but in any, either with OSHA or mine safety and health, is documentation that you took measures to address concerns and problems. You need a paper trail. It's a paper trail, if you in law, is really in many ways one of the most compelling avenues of proof. If you can show a long line of documentation, but then again, now you have the difficulty with it. For anybody that's our age, they remember Watergate, the missing 18 minutes of tape.
I read about it in history books.
On Richard Nixon's tape. Nixon used to tape his people coming into the Oval Office. It was unbeknownst to the world until one of his aides brought it out during the hearings, and so naturally that was a bombshell. Well, what really sank him was the fact that 18 minutes were missing. If you've got documentation, it has to be comprehensive. If you've got gaps, you've got problems. If you've got something that you're going nicely along, and in either way, it could be that you're comprehensive up to a point, and then all of a sudden you just happen to be missing documents that relate to a potential or an alleged outbreak. You've got serious problems. On the other hand, if your documentation is spotty and isn't well kept, and unfortunately, I've run into clients, some of whom it still amazes me that they do business without documentation in contractual matters. So now if you implement a policy that we're going to document that we took temperatures at this time, that we provided masks, we provided gloves, we had a send home policy on these, it has to be accurate. It has to be consistent. If you've got gaps, you've got problems. And worst of all, and this, it's again, the law is so much common sense, but we see it ignored all the time. Never, ever falsify documents. Nothing. You can't have, so, oh man, I forgot to write that down, and then backdate it, put it in, and then 2 hours later, when your shift ended, 15 minutes after you were supposed to write that, and that can be documented. Never do that. Never have somebody sign your name for you when you didn't, or whatever. Certified documents with your signature that is incorrect or false. That I cannot stress that more than anything. It may not even be a legal document at the time that you're doing it. Oh, I didn't give out those masks, but I will, or I gave whatever. They've got to be accurate.
Good advice.
Spell
Good
something
advice.
correctly, but if you add something that didn't happen, that is, you couldn't do worse for yourself. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So the other thing I'm gonna add to that, Dave, is, and don't lie to the FBI.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So I want to get to two major topics. In fact, we were debating to show you how things are changing. This illustrious panel we have with us has had several debates on certain issues as to what is the right thing to do, which is a good thing. So I want to make sure we cover two areas before the webinar closes out. So one of them is related to what to do with when you find an employee has an illness, and what do you do about it, or is showing symptoms. Actually, it's three. Let me start off with, people have been asking about temperature taking and that type of thing. So I want to address that. Then I want to address, what do you do when you find somebody in the workplace that is it? And then third, the whole question of face masks. I think we probably got the majority of the questions we got related to face masks. So those are the three areas I'm going to move to. So basically, the OSHA guidelines suggest policies developed related to the prompt identification and isolation of sick people. So let's talk first about that, to identify. And I'm first going to ask Dave, from a legal standpoint, your thoughts on that. And most people think about taking temperature to identify, a self-declaration type thing, and those types. So from a legal standpoint, what does that mean to you when the OSHA is saying have something in place to identify? What do we need to be careful about?
That's a tough one, because obviously you would want trained professionals at some level who would be the best ones to identify somebody. We've discussed the issue. We've got people that are completely asymptomatic that come in. So right off the bat, you're dealing with a class of people and a particular type of ailment that, Tim and I addressed it. It's a secret. It's only, or the unknowns that you can't see and you can't tell.